December 22, 1946. A black Cadillac pulled up to the Hotel Nacional in Havana, Cuba. The man who stepped out wore a white linen suit, Panama hat, and sunglasses. To tourists, he looked like a wealthy businessman. To the doorman who recognized him, he looked like a ghost, because Lucky Luciano was supposed to be in Italy, 6,000 miles away, exiled, banned from the Western Hemisphere. But here he was, walking into the most luxurious hotel in Havana like he owned it, because in a way he did. This story doesn't start in Cuba. It starts 6 months earlier, in New York Harbor. February 1946. Lucky Luciano stood on the deck of the SS Laura Keene, watching the Statue of Liberty disappear behind him. He was being deported. Thomas Dewey, the prosecutor who'd put him in prison in 1936, had made sure that Luciano had helped the U.S. government win World War II. He'd used his mafia connections to secure the New York waterfront against Nazi saboteurs. He'd provided intelligence for the invasion of Sicily. In return, the government commuted his sentence, but they didn't give him freedom. They gave him exile. "You can leave prison," Governor Dewey told him, "but you leave America too, forever." Luciano took the deal. On February 9, 1946, he boarded a ship to Italy. The newspapers called it justice, the mob called it a betrayal, and Luciano called it temporary. Luciano arrived in Italy to a hero's welcome. Sicilians treated him like royalty. After all, he was the man who'd helped liberate Sicily from the Nazis. But Luciano wasn't interested in being a retired legend. He was 49 years old, still sharp, still connected, still the boss of bosses. And he had a problem. While he'd been in prison and then in exile, the American mob had started fracturing. Vito Genovese, Luciano's former underboss, was making moves, quietly positioning himself to take over. Bugsy Siegel, the charming psychopath who Luciano had helped build up, was in Las Vegas burning through mob money on a casino project called the Flamingo. The heroin trade was exploding, and nobody was coordinating it. Different families were stepping on each other's territory. Violence was increasing. The commission that Luciano had created in 1931, the ruling body that kept peace between the families, was falling apart without his leadership. So Luciano made a decision. If he couldn't go to America, he'd bring America to him. Meyer Lansky visited Luciano in Italy in October 1946. Lansky was Luciano's oldest friend. They'd been partners since they were teenagers. "The families are talking about Bugsy," Lansky said quietly, as they walked through a Naples street. "He's months behind schedule on the Flamingo. The place was supposed to cost $1 million. He's spent $6 million and it's still not done." Luciano stopped walking. "How much of that $6 million actually went into the casino?" Lansky looked uncomfortable. "Maybe $3 million. The rest, Bugsy and his girlfriend Virginia Hill have been skimming Swiss bank accounts." Luciano was silent for a long moment. Bugsy Siegel was his friend. They'd worked together for 20 years. Bugsy had been one of the men who'd killed Joe Masseria back in 1931, the hit that had made Luciano's rise possible. But friendship had limits, and stealing from the mob was past those limits. "We need a meeting," Luciano said. "All the families. I need to see everyone's faces when we talk about this." "Where?" Lansky asked. "You can't come back to America." Luciano smiled. "Cuba. It's close enough." But Luciano knew the meeting wasn't just about Bugsy. It was about showing the mob that even in exile he was still in control, still the one making decisions, still the boss of bosses. November 1946. Luciano slipped out of Italy on a cargo ship. Italian authorities looked the other way. They'd been paid well to do so. He traveled through South America, Brazil, Venezuela, then a small plane to Cuba. The Cuban government, under President Ramon Grau, welcomed him. Why? Because Meyer Lansky had already established the mob's gambling operations in Havana. The casinos brought millions in tourist dollars, and Lansky made sure Cuban officials got their cut. When Lucky Luciano wanted to hide in Cuba, Cuba was happy to oblige. For a price, Luciano checked into the Hotel Nacional under a false name, but he didn't hide. He took the presidential suite on the 8th floor. He dined in the hotel restaurant. He walked the grounds. Because he wanted word to spread. He wanted the FBI to know he was close. He wanted every mob boss in America to understand. Lucky Luciano was back in the game. The invitations went out through coded messages and trusted intermediaries. Frank Costello in New York received his through a cousin. Vito Genovese got his through a soldier. Joe Bonanno, Tommy Lucchese, Albert Anastasia, Carlo Gambino, all the major players received the same message. Charlie wants to see you. Havana, Hotel Nacional. December 22nd. Don't be late. They came. Not all at once. They arrived over 3 days. Different flights, different cover stories. To the outside world, they were businessmen attending a conference, investors looking at Cuban casino opportunities. But by December 22, 1946, the 8th floor of the Hotel Nacional held more organized crime power than had ever been assembled in one place. 15 men sat around a conference table in a private suite. The air was thick with cigar smoke. Whiskey glasses sat in front of each man, and at the head of the table in a white linen suit sat Lucky Luciano. "Gentlemen," Luciano said, his voice calm and steady, "thank you coming. I know it wasn't easy, but we have business to discuss. Business that can't be handled over the phone or through messages. Business that requires us to look each other in the eye." He lit a Cuban cigar. Let the moment hang. "First item," Luciano continued. "Benjamin Siegel and the Las Vegas situation." The room tensed. Everyone knew what this meant. Bugsy Siegel's fate was about to be decided. Meyer Lansky spoke first. He had to. Bugsy was his friend too. "Ben's vision for Las Vegas is sound," Lansky said carefully. "A legal gambling paradise in the desert. But the execution has been problematic. The Flamingo has cost $6 million. It's still not finished, and there's evidence that Ben and Virginia Hill have been skimming funds." Vito Genovese leaned forward. He'd been waiting for this. Skimming. He's stealing from all of us. Every family put money into that project, and Siegel is treating it like his personal bank account. Frank Costello, ever the diplomat, tried to find middle ground. "Ben's a valuable asset. He's got vision. He's got connections in Hollywood. Maybe we give him a deadline, 3 months to open the Flamingo and show profits. If he can't do it, then we make changes." But Albert Anastasia shook his head. "You give a thief more time, he steals more." Ben Siegel crossed a line. "We all know the rules. You steal from your partners, there's only one outcome." The debate continued for an hour. Luciano listened. Let everyone speak. Let them think they were making the decision. But everyone in that room knew the truth. Lucky Luciano had already decided Bugsy Siegel's fate before the meeting started. This was theater. This was showing the commission that decisions were made collectively, democratically, even when they weren't. Finally, Luciano raised his hand. The room went silent. "Here's what we're going to do," Luciano said. "Ben gets 3 months. The Flamingo opens on schedule. If it makes money, if Ben returns what he owes, we move forward. But if he fails..." Luciano didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The vote was called. 12 men voted to give Bugsy 3 months. 3 voted to kill him immediately. The 3-month deadline was set, March 1947. But everyone in that room knew Bugsy wouldn't make it. The Flamingo opened on December 26, 1946, just 4 days after the Havana meeting. It was a disaster. The casino lost money. The hotel was only half finished. Bugsy had failed. On June 20th, 1947, Benjamin Bugsy Siegel was sitting in Virginia Hills' Beverly Hills mansion reading the Los Angeles Times. At 10:45 p.m., someone fired 9 shots through the window. 4 bullets hit Bugsy. One went through his eye and out the back of his head. He died instantly. The decision made in Havana was carried out in California. But that wasn't the only decision made at the Hotel Nacional. After the Bugsy vote, Luciano moved to the second item. Vito. Luciano said, looking directly at Genovese, "I've been hearing things about you positioning yourself to take over operations in New York. Things about you making alliances without commission approval." The room went cold. Genovese didn't flinch. "Charlie, I've done nothing but protect our interests while you were away. If people are telling you different, they're lying." Luciano smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm sure you were protecting something, Vito. The question is, were you protecting our interests or yours?" Meyer Lansky slid a folder across the table to Luciano. Inside, financial records, payments made, alliances formed, evidence that Genovese had been building his own power base. Genovese's face darkened. "You've been having me followed. I've been having everyone followed," Luciano said simply. "That's how you stay alive in this business. You trust, but you verify." The tension was suffocating. Frank Costello cleared his throat. "Charlie, maybe this is a conversation for another time, a private conversation." Luciano considered this, then nodded. "Vito and I will talk, privately. But let me be clear to everyone here. The commission works because we have rules, we have structure. Anyone who thinks they can operate outside that structure, anyone who thinks they can build their own empire while the rest of us follow the rules." He let the sentence hang. "That person becomes a problem, and we solve problems." Genovese got the message. So did everyone else. Luciano wasn't killing Genovese today, but he was putting him on notice. The third item was the future of narcotics. This was the most important discussion, the one that would shape organized crime for decades. "Heroin is coming," Luciano said bluntly. "It's already here. The question isn't whether we get involved, the question is how we control it." Some of the older bosses shifted uncomfortably. Joe Bonanno spoke up. "Charlie, narcotics brings heat, federal heat. The government will come down hard on anyone dealing heroin. It's not like bootlegging, this is different." Luciano nodded. "You're right, it's different. Which is why we need rules. We don't sell to kids, we don't sell in our own neighborhoods, we keep it controlled, we keep it clean." Meyer Lansky added his perspective. "The profit margins are incredible. 1 kilogram of pure heroin, properly cut and distributed, can generate $500,000. The demand is there. If we don't control the supply, someone else will." Anastasia grunted. "Let someone else take the risk. I don't want federal agents crawling up my ass because some junkie overdosed." The debate went back and forth. Finally, Luciano made the ruling. "Here's the policy. Each family can make their own decision about narcotics. The commission won't mandate involvement. But if you get involved, you follow the rules. No selling to kids, no using it as leverage against other families, and if you bring heat, you handle it yourself. The commission doesn't protect you from your own stupidity." It was a compromise, but it was also a green light. The families that wanted to get into heroin could, the families that didn't wouldn't be forced. And Lucky Luciano from Exile in Cuba had just structured the modern drug trade. The meeting lasted 3 days. Decisions were made, territories were confirmed, disputes were settled, and through it all, Lucky Luciano proved something crucial. Even 6,000 miles away from New York, Even banned from setting foot in America, he was still the boss of bosses. But while the mob celebrated in Havana, someone else was paying attention. The FBI. Edgar Hoover's agents had been tracking mob movement for weeks. They noticed the sudden influx of known criminals into Cuba, and they knew why. Lucky Luciano was in Havana. The man who'd been deported, who was supposed to be in Italy, had slipped back into the Western Hemisphere. Hoover was furious. He went directly to the State Department, and the State Department went to Cuba with an ultimatum: deport Lucky Luciano immediately. Send him back to Italy, or we will impose a total embargo on Cuban sugar exports. Cuba's economy depended on sugar trade with the United States. It was their primary export. Without it, the country would collapse economically. President Ramon Grau had no choice. On February 23, 1947, Cuban police surrounded the Hotel Nacional. Lucky Luciano was arrested. He didn't resist. He'd known this was coming. Meyer Lansky had warned him a week earlier that the FBI was pressuring Cuba. Luciano had stayed anyway, because he'd accomplished what he needed to accomplish. The meeting had happened. The decisions had been made. The power structure had been reinforced. Now he could leave. On February 28, 1947, Lucky Luciano was put on a Turkish cargo ship bound for Genoa, Italy. He stood on the deck as Havana disappeared behind him. Next to him stood Meyer Lansky, who'd come to see him off. It was worth it, Luciano said quietly. They needed to see my face. They needed to know I'm still here. Lansky nodded. Bugsy's got 3 months, but we both know he won't make it. Luciano didn't respond. They both knew. The decision had been made in Havana. The execution would happen in Beverly Hills. Lucky Luciano never returned to the Western Hemisphere. He spent the rest of his life in Italy. But his influence never faded. The decisions made at the Hotel Nacional meeting in December 1946 shaped organized crime for the next 30 years. Bugsy Siegel was killed 6 months later. Vito Genovese eventually made his move, but not until after Luciano's death in 1962. The heroin trade exploded exactly as Luciano had predicted, following the rules he'd established, and every major mob boss who'd sat in that room in Havana remembered the lesson. Lucky Luciano could be exiled from America, but he couldn't be exiled from power. One more thing, the next story is bloodier.